back to Listening Librarians. I'm Jennifer and I'm here with Katie and Kimberly, and today we are going to talk about books that we've listened to that fall under the category of Afrofuturism.
So what is that?
That is a very good question. Totally unprompted. Since we're celebrating Black History Month, we thought we'd look at books that are in the kind of subgenre of Afrofuturism, which, if you just go to Wikipedia, will give you the example of it's a cultural aesthetic, philosophy of science, and history that explores the intersection of the African diaspora culture with science and technology. What does that mean? So we're talking about books that definitely center the Black or African experience. They often cover themes like feminism, alienation, the reclamation of identity or perspective. So it's kind of a retelling of history or projection of the future that shows more Black or African American characters in a way that gives them gives them more of a positive impact on the world around them than what we've had in our history to date. So we've got some things that go from sci-fi to fantasy, some things that are futuristic, some that are more historical, but they're kind of a rewriting of history. So we've got some books for you today, and Katie is going to kick us off.
Yes, so I listened to two books. The first book that I listened to was called Escaping Exodus. It's by Nicky, Drayden, and it is about 10 hours. Now, it's narrated by two women, Sharice Booth, and I have bad handwriting, Adenral Oho. And so I'm going to start by saying that maybe this book was not for me. So it is set in a future where our main character is Seska. She is next in line to become this matriarch of this like nomadic nation that takes their spaceship from space beast to space beast. What's a space beast? It's literally like this massive tentacled like space whale that's so large. And that was one of the things I struggled with the book was that the proportions. So it's so big that they can like walk through a pore, of its skin. So it's massive. So she's next in line to become leader of this society. It is very female centric. It is powerfully Black. One of the things that was interesting was that men were very much seen as like less than and almost invisible in this society. And so the story really kicks off with Seska waking up early with the help of her friend Adala. And it's during an excavation, which is when they've just arrived on a new beast. And so she wants to see what it's like to kind of get the beast ready for everybody else to be woken out of stasis. And these beast workers, which are seen as a lower class, are building homes, but they're using like bones of this beast to build homes. So it was interesting. What I liked, it was, real kick butt women, especially some of the beast workers. There's a lot of class disputes with the beast workers not being seen as appreciated, so they kind of get like a union thing going on. I thought it was a really interesting look at gender inequality, and I'd say the Barbie movie of all things, which was very different, but that was probably the only thing I could think of where they showed like women as like and men as like you're there to look pretty. So that's kind of what's going on in this book. I liked that sexuality was not a big deal. And I probably, of all of the myriad of things that go on in this book, the class discord was the most interesting to me. What I struggled with was that there's too much going on. So there's a lot of politics. Seska has to get married. Seska has a crush on her friend who's in a lower class, so she can't marry this person. The beast that they're, now living inside of is pregnant, and so she can communicate with it, and so there's just a lot. There's a lot going on. I would have maybe suggested a little skosh of editing, but it was definitely something I had never read before. And so so if you like hard sci-fi and you don't mind tentacles, spoiler / trigger warning, it was interesting. Like I said, just maybe not my genre. So yeah.
Okay.
What did you listen to, Kimberly?
Well, my first book has been around for a little while. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's called Children of Blood and Bone. This is a West African inspired fantasy. The runtime is just short of 18 hours, so this is a little on the long side, but it catches you and just pulls you in, and it seems like the time flies. Our main character remembers magic. This was a society that was divided into people with magic and people without magic. But along comes this king who decides no and tries to kill all the magic users off, one being her mother. So we're at the current time now. You'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce the names a little bit. Zlini is our main character. Her and her brother go to the main city because now anybody who has had magic and they managed to take the ruler managed to remove their magic, but they still are considered magic users and therefore they're a lower caste than the other people, and they have to pay this heavy toll. So her and her brother go to this town, and it's the capital town, and they need to make money so that they can pay what's basically a tax on magic users. Well, while they're there in the capital city, they meet and help a girl who turns out to be the princess, the daughter of this king who's caused all these issues. Her name is Amari, and she has stolen a scroll that can basically return the magic user's power. So they take off, our three main characters take off to the temple of the magic users. They're pursued by the prince, the son of the king, and his admiral. When they get to the temple, the priest tells them that they can use the scroll, a bone dagger, which he gives them, and an artifact they need to find called the sunstone. And if they use these three in this proper ritual, it will basically mend the connection between the magic users and their gods, and it will bring the magic back. This book was, like I said, excellent to listen to. I really, really enjoyed it. The second book has been out for a while, but the third book is coming out this year. So I am greatly looking forward to the conclusion of this trilogy.
And you just heard that they're making a movie of this.
Yes, they are supposedly making a movie of this. So
it has a director lined up. So
there's a director picked.
Exciting.
So yes, hopefully we will see a well-done movie of this particular book.
Fingers crossed. Well, my first book is it's a little more hard sci-fi, but because of the way the story plays out, I thought it would fit in with Afrofuturism. And that is a relatively new book called Splinter in the Sky. It's a debut novel by Kemi Ashing-Giwa. And the audiobook is 14 hours long. So there are parts of it which can make it feel long, but I feel like the story moves along at a decent pace. It starts off with Nnedi, who wants to quit her day job as a scribe and open a tea shop.
You like tea.
I like tea, yeah. So
Theme.
that kind of hooked me right there. Anitan's sibling, who is Xiang, wants to study architecture. But these two people live on Koriko, which is a remote planet in the Holy Valbaran Empire. And you hear the word empire and you kind of go, ooh, I wonder what's going on here. Yes, Koriko has been colonized by the Holy Valbaran Empire, and they are not exactly treated well by their imperial overlords. Now, Anitan has a relationship with Ajana, who is the local representative of the empire, the governor of Koriko. So, she has a somewhat okay relationship there. But when Anitan's sibling is abducted by imperial soldiers and Anitan goes to Ajana to get help to find out what happened to Xiang, Ajana ends up being assassinated.
Oh.
And yeah, we've got some problems. So Anitan wants to track down her sibling, but also because the empire feels there has to be a price paid by the people of Koriko, the head of the village is basically required to send off their child. And Anitan volunteers as child, as it were, so that she can go to the heart of the empire and find out what's going on. En route, as they're traveling through space, she ends up getting recruited to spy on the government officials by another, not quite empire, but another big political entity. And the carrot that's held out to her in this deal is the possibility of winning back her nation's independence. So she's like, okay,
it's a big carrot.
We got a lot to juggle here. So Anitan makes it to the heart of the empire. It's a really interestingly described place. Highly recommend you read it for that. And the way she manages to move about in imperial society is by serving tea, because tea is a specialty from her planet. She's an expert at it. This is a way to kind of get in and hear what people are saying. She's very much overlooked because of her planet's position.
And a servant role. And
yeah. But she draws the attention of the god emperor. And I'm just going to leave it there because there's a whole lot of political wrangling and a lot of intrigue. It does address issues of colonization and colonialism. There's also some really interesting subplot about appropriation, cultural appropriation, and theft of artifacts. Yeah, so that's a really interesting way of mixing some of these issues into a very futuristic setting with a little bit of a mystery and a little bit of a romance thrown in as well. Anitan and the people of Koriko are coded as black or brown-skinned. The people of the empire are coded as white. It's never really overtly expressed as racism like we would know it, but it's very definitely there to play out these themes.
Right.
The audiobook is narrated by Sunila Namkani, who has done a lot of other really interesting audiobooks. She's very good to listen to. So I would highly recommend it if you're interested in 14 hours of a space opera, Afrofuturist, mystery, thriller, sci-fi, whatever. It's fun.
Well, the next book I listened to is called War Girls. It is by Tochi Onyebuchi. It is from 2019, so it's a little bit older. And it is actually narrated by Adepero Oduye, and she is a Nigerian-American actress. So she's been in a couple of films. Maybe the most famous one is 12 Years a Slave, I think I saw.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, she is Nigerian, and this actually takes place in Nigeria in the year 2172. So there's a civil war going on in Nigeria, and Tochi Onyebuchi actually got the idea to write this book from an actual civil war that took place in Nigeria in the 1960s. So, but this is taking place in 2172. So the one side is Nigeria, the other side is the Republic of Biafra, and Biafra is fighting for independence. Now, our story focuses on two sisters. We have Ife. She is a hacker. She has an implant that she calls her accent, and it kind of lets her tap into and hack almost anything around her. It's really cool. And people are going to be jealous of it. Then we have her sister Onyi. Onyi is older. She has this really cool bionic arm. She grew up as a child soldier, so there's a little bit of trauma there. And she's very good at fighting. Now, right away, and they're children, more or less, like preteen, young teen, I would say, right at the beginning, and their camp is attacked. And the two sisters are separated. Each believes the other one is dead. Now, during the attack, Ife is kidnapped and she is taken to this beautiful glass city. But Onyi is left behind and she becomes this mech fighter. And she actually ends up being so good that they call her the Demon of Biafra. And so after that attack, it kind of jumps forward 4 years to where they're older. So I'm not going to tell you if they get back together, or, kind of what happens, but it's very high stakes. Very action-packed. There are some very cool mech battles, and it's very imaginative. A slight trigger warning, of course, that there is violence in child soldiers, ethnic cleansing, and so that does kind of make you a little uncomfortable to read or listen to at certain points. So, but I enjoyed it.
And it's the first book of a duology. I don't remember the name of the second book.
I don't know either. I can picture the cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I will say a lot of people thought that it should have just ended where this one. I'm not going to talk about the ending, but yes, so there is a book 2 as well. So what about you, Kimberly?
My second book is actually a novella. It is called Black God's Drums by P. Djeli Clark. It's narrated by Channing Waits, and it runs just a tad over 3 hours. This particular novella is set in what is basically an alternative New Orleans. Mm-hmm. In this world, the Confederacy won the Civil War, so right there you've got that in play. Our main character's name is Creeper, and she has a secret. The African Orsha Oya, who is the Orsha of wind and storms, talks to her in her head. So she has a god in her head speaking to her. She wants to escape the streets of New Orleans where she's lived and doesn't particularly want to be. And so her main goal is to find a ride on an airship. She wants to be on an airship. So she sets out to earn the trust of an air captain named Anne-Marie by telling Anne-Marie about a Haitian scientist that she found out about who has a weapon called Black God's Drum. Soon, Creeper, Anne-Marie, and the crew of the Midnight Robber are involved in a mission to stop the use of this strange, mysterious weapon to keep it from being used to destroy New Orleans. This was fun. The storyline is great. I didn't particularly care for the narrator. But the story was wonderful. Lots of issues of class and race and that type of thing in this book as well. If I had to do it again, I would probably read it rather than listen to it, just because I couldn't I couldn't get into as much as I could have because I just didn't care for the narrator. But that was just my opinion.
Yeah, I've read it in print, I think a couple of times. And I mean, I really like P. Djeli Clark and his books. And the novellas also, they're just so tight. You get the world building, you get the characters, you get the action in this really small package. And yeah, he just does an amazing job of setting up a really interesting story.
Yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to read any of his other stuff.
Yeah.
Listen to maybe would depend on the narrator again.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my last one is also a novella. It's actually the first of 3 novellas.
Okay.
And this first one is called Binti. It's by Nnedi Okorafor, who actually doesn't like the term Afrofuturism so much as she prefers African futurism, because I mean most of her books are set in Africa, or in this instance a country that I think is supposed to read as African. Now this book came out in 2015, and the main character is of course Binti, who is 16 years old as the novella starts. She's a young woman of the Himba, which is people who are coded as Black and who have never left the planet. They are very happy to stay right where they are in their homeland. Thank you very much. However, Binti wants to see more of the universe. So she has successfully passed the entrance exam to UMSA University, which is well beyond her home world. I mean, it's out there in space somewhere. It takes a long time to get there. This means she has to give up her family. She sort of has to give up her culture, but she's going to keep some of that with her. She knows she's going to be among strangers who won't respect her people's customs, and she's like, well, I'm just still going to be me. Part of it is one thing that is very specific in this book, and it is a definite part of the plot, is the red clay that the Himba people cover their skin with. There are a lot of microaggressions that she has to deal with because this is so very different, and you know, clay dries, and so they think, oh, she's dirty, or why are you like this? But she always manages to rise above that. Now, UMSA University has for a long time been at war with a group known as the Meduse. It's a very nightmarish alien race, and trigger warnings again for tentacles.
Okay.
Yeah. Her ship has to travel weeks to get to UMSA, and the route it takes goes close to Meduse space. So days just before arriving at the university, the ship is attacked by the Meduse, and Binti somehow is the only survivor.
Okay.
And I'm gonna leave it there because after that we start getting into spoilers. But she becomes someone who is one of the very few people who can connect with the Meduse.
Okay.
And this then has impact further on. And it also has impact for her own powers and connection to her people. This particular novella is approximately 2.5 hours, so it goes quickly. It's narrated by Robin Miles, and this novella actually won both the Hugo Award and the Nebula Award.
I was going to say, I knew the name immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Nnedi Okorafor is another one of these authors. I really enjoy whatever she writes. But this trilogy about Binti is especially interesting because you've got very different cultures, a very different setup for what the world, the universe is like, and then how Binti brings that connection eventually back to her people in the subsequent novellas.
Oh, nice.
So, a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our presentation, and join us next month when we talk about women in historical fiction.
Bye.
Bye.